Ever feel like you're just getting bombarded by headlines, but you're still kind of thirsty for like real understanding?
Yeah,
That's where deep dives come in.
exactly.
Today, we're going to be exploring the U.S. political landscape as of February 13th, 2025.
Okay.
So buckle up because we've got reports, analyses that reveal some seriously wild power dynamics.
It's really striking, actually, just how interconnected everything seems to be. We're going to be looking at economic indicators, legal battles, even some surprising players vying for influence, which really paints a fascinating picture of where the power lies in America today.
Okay, let's dive right in.
Yeah,
Our first stop takes us straight to the top of the executive branch, and the headline is pretty unbelievable. Elon Musk, senior co-president.
it's not a joke,
Really?
though it certainly sounds like one.
Yeah.
But an executive order has granted Musk immense authority, effectively placing him in a position to heavily influence the federal government.
To be honest, it's a little unsettling. How does an executive order suddenly turn a tech CEO into, well, a co-president?
Well, the order itself focuses on government restructuring, so agency downsizing, hiring freezes, and of course a big push for deregulation.
Ah, deregulation. Now that rings a bell. Didn't some of Musk's companies have some run-ins with regulatory bodies?
They did indeed. Think back to Tesla's autopilot system. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration had quite a few concerns,
Oh, right.
and SpaceX's environmental impact assessments sparked controversy with the EPA.
So this isn't just about efficiency, is it? It feels like concentrating power while sidelining potential checks and balances.
Exactly. The question is, does this order truly aim to streamline government operations, or does it strategically weaken the government's ability to scrutinize powerful corporations? Perhaps even those owned by Musk himself.
Okay, that's a pretty concerning thought.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears and see how this theme of power dynamics is playing out in Congress. Our sources paint a chaotic picture of the current budget battle.
Imagine this. You've got the House pushing for drastic spending cuts, Trump pushing his own agenda, demanding tax breaks, and then you have certain Republicans demanding more SALT deductions. It's a legislative showdown.
It sounds like gridlock waiting to happen. How will they even pass a budget with all of these conflicting priorities?
Well, the Republicans are attempting to utilize a process called budget reconciliation, which would allow them to bypass a Democratic filibuster in the Senate.
Hold on. For those of us who aren't political insiders, what exactly is budget reconciliation?
It's essentially a legislative loophole that allows certain budgetary measures to pass with a simple majority rather than the usual 60 votes needed to overcome a filibuster.
Ah, that makes sense. But even with this maneuver, it sounds like passing a budget will be a tough climb.
You're right. Even with reconciliation, their slim majority and deep internal divisions make finding common ground extremely difficult.
Yeah.
We've got the Freedom Caucus pushing for extreme austerity, while others are more focused on advancing Trump's agenda. So all this friction makes reaching a consensus nearly impossible.
It's like a political tug-of-war with each side pulling in a different
A
direction.
very apt analogy.
Yeah,
And speaking of power struggles, we can't ignore the role of the judiciary.
right.
We've got two recent court decisions that highlight just how much influence the courts wield in this political landscape.
Okay, let's hear about these rulings. Are they adding to the chaos or bringing some order?
It's a mixed bag, really. In one case, a federal judge halted a Trump executive order that attempted to freeze nearly all federal spending.
So in this instance, the courts acted as a check on executive power.
Exactly. The judge argued that the order amounted to illegal impoundment of funds and overstepped the boundaries of presidential authority.
Wow.
The appeals court even upheld the ruling, sending a very clear message about the limits of executive power.
That's reassuring to hear, but then we have the other ruling, the one dismissing the case against Trump for allegedly stealing government documents. That doesn't exactly inspire confidence in the judicial system's impartiality.
You're right. The dismissal of this case, particularly after the Trump-appointed Department of Justice withdrew its appeal, raises valid concerns about potential political interference within the judiciary.
Yeah.
It stands in stark contrast to the previous case and underscores the complexities and potential vulnerabilities of our legal system.
It seems like the courts can act as a safeguard against overreach, but they're not immune to the influence of political pressures.
A very astute observation. And while we're on the topic of potential conflicts of interest, let's shift our attention over to the financial sector.
Okay.
Trump has been busy appointing individuals to key regulatory positions, and their backgrounds are raising some serious eyebrows.
I'm intrigued. Fill me in on these appointments and why they're causing a stir.
Well, these appointees, they come primarily from corporate law backgrounds. Some even have deep ties to the cryptocurrency world.
Huh.
It's raising concerns about whether their loyalties lie with protecting consumers or advancing the interests of the industries they once represented.
It does seem like a potential conflict of interest. What specific consequences could we see from this deregulatory push?
Well, there's a real possibility of a rollback of regulations put in place after the 2008 financial crisis.
Right.
Remember, those regulations were designed to prevent another meltdown, but weakening them could leave us more vulnerable to systemic risks.
It's almost like playing Jenga with the economy, pulling out pieces and hoping the whole thing doesn't come crashing down.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And the growing emphasis on cryptocurrency adds another layer of complexity and potential volatility.
Yeah.
Crypto, with its decentralized and often unregulated nature, presents unique challenges to traditional financial oversight.
It seems like this is a situation worth keeping a close eye on. Okay, let's step back from the high-stakes world of finance for a while and talk about something that affects all of us daily, the cost of living. You mentioned earlier that inflation is impacting the prices of everyday essentials like eggs and meat.
It is, and it's hitting consumers hard. Remember, Trump's campaign promises to lower prices. Well, this surge in inflation tells a different story.
Reality has a way of challenging even the most confident pronouncements. How is this inflationary pressure impacting Trump politically?
Well, it's putting him in a difficult position. Rising inflation puts pressure on the Federal Reserve to raise interest rates,
Right.
which could potentially slow economic growth and jeopardize his reelection prospects. It's a classic political dilemma balancing economic stability with political ambition.
Sounds like he's caught between a rock and a hard place, but inflation isn't the only challenge facing voters. We're also seeing a concerted effort to restrict access to the ballot box.
You're absolutely right. These efforts to suppress voting rights, often targeting minority and low-income communities, are deeply concerning. It's a direct assault on the very foundation of our democracy.
Let's break this down a bit further. What are some of the key tactics being employed to disenfranchise voters?
Well, we're seeing a multi-pronged attack. Gerrymandering, which manipulates electoral districts to favor one party into another, restrictive voter ID laws that disproportionately impact minority and low-income voters who may lack specific forms of identification, limitations on absentee ballots, making it more difficult for people to vote by mail, and even attempts to disenfranchise felons, denying them the right to vote even after they've served their sentences.
It's like they're trying to erect every possible barrier to prevent people from exercising their fundamental right to vote.
That's a powerful way to put it. And it's not just about the tactics themselves, it's about the legal strategy driving these efforts. Conservative groups are strategically challenging various provisions of the Voting Rights Act, hoping to weaken or overturn key protections that ensure equal access to the ballot box.
So they're not just trying to make it harder to vote, they're trying to dismantle the very legal framework designed to protect the right to vote.
Precisely. They're exploiting legal loopholes and pushing the boundaries of judicial interpretation to achieve their aims. It's a reminder that the fight for voting rights is an ongoing battle, and we can't afford to be complacent.
It's a stark reminder that democracy is fragile and requires constant vigilance to safeguard it. Now, shifting our focus to national security, the appointment of Tulsi Gabbard as Director of National Intelligence has sent shockwaves through the intelligence community.
Yes, and the potential repercussions are significant. This position oversees all 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, making it a critical role in protecting our national security. Gabbard's confirmation has created a sense of unease among our allies, with some expressing concerns about her past statements and potential ties to Russia.
So there's a real concern that Gabbard's leadership could actually weaken our intelligence capabilities and damage relationships with key allies who might now hesitate to share sensitive information with us.
That's the fear. It's a high-stakes gamble with potentially devastating consequences for national security.
It seems like every corner of our political landscape is rife with complex challenges and power struggles, from attempts to consolidate power within the executive branch to threats to our democratic institutions and potential risks to our national security. It can feel overwhelming to keep up with it all.
It's true, it's a lot to process. But remember, being aware of these challenges is the first step in addressing them. We need to stay informed, engage critically with the information we receive, and hold our leaders accountable.
It's about reclaiming our agency in a world that often feels chaotic and out of control. Now, let's talk about a force that exerts a tremendous amount of influence on our political system: money. You mentioned earlier that we're about to witness a billion-dollar Senate race.
The upcoming Senate races are expected to shatter all previous spending records, with hundreds of millions of dollars pouring into a handful of key states. This level of spending raises serious questions about the undue influence of money in politics.
It's like a political arms race fueled by campaign contributions, where the wealthiest donors have an outsized impact on the outcome of elections. What does this mean for ordinary voters?
With so much money floating the airwaves, it's easy for voters to become overwhelmed and disillusioned. The constant barrage of political advertising can make it difficult to discern fact from fiction, and it often leads to a sense of cynicism and apathy. It's crucial to remember that our voices still matter, and we must demand that our elected officials prioritize the needs of their constituents, not just the interests of their wealthy donors.
It's a reminder that we, the people, hold the ultimate power in a democracy, and we must not let that power be eroded by the influence of money. Now, before we conclude our deep dive, there's one more intriguing piece of information we need to discuss. It involves a certain former senator and a potential Valentine's Day card.
Ah, you must be talking about Joe Manchin. Democrats might want to consider sending him a thank you note for his unwavering stance on the filibuster.
Wait, how is Manchin, a Democrat, helping the Republicans?
It's a bit of a paradoxical situation. By refusing to abolish the filibuster, Manchin effectively blocked the Democrats from packing the Supreme Court when they had control of both Congress and the White House.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connection here.
If the Democrats had succeeded in packing the court, the Republicans, now in control, would likely have retaliated by expanding the entire federal judiciary, tilting the balance of power in their favor for generations to come.
So Manchin, by adhering to his principles and maintaining the status quo, inadvertently saved the Democrats from a potentially disastrous judicial power grab by the Republicans.
That's one way to interpret it. His stance, while frustrating to many Democrats at the time, may have actually prevented a far worse outcome in the long run.
It's a fascinating twist of political fate, and it highlights the unintended consequences that can arise from seemingly minor actions. We're constantly reminded that politics is a complex and ever-evolving game, full of surprises and unexpected alliances. It really underscores that sometimes even seemingly insignificant decisions can have major ripple effects throughout the political landscape.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that politics is rarely straightforward and often involves a complex interplay of personalities, ideologies, and strategic calculations. It's fascinating how something like a Valentine's Day card for Joe Manchin could symbolize a pivotal moment in this power struggle.
Speaking of navigating complexity, we've covered a lot of ground today, from Elon Musk's newfound influence to the battle over voting rights. It's a lot to absorb.
It's true, the sheer volume of information can be overwhelming. But remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand these issues, the better equipped we are to engage in meaningful dialogue, demand accountability from our leaders, and ultimately shape the direction of our nation.
So where do we go from here? How do we make sense of it all and find our own agency amidst this whirlwind of events?
I think it starts with recognizing those seemingly disparate threads we discussed earlier. They are all connected in some way. Understanding those connections is crucial to navigating this complex landscape. Paying attention to those seemingly insignificant events, the ones that often get buried beneath the headlines, can provide valuable insights into the bigger picture.
So it's about connecting the dots, recognizing patterns, and understanding the forces that are shaping our political reality.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to dive deeper into the issues that matter to you. Challenge assumptions, question narratives, and seek out diverse perspectives. Don't just passively consume information. Engage with it critically.
It's about becoming informed citizens, not just spectators in the political arena. We need to analyze, interpret, and form our own conclusions based on a well-rounded understanding of the issues.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of conversation. Discuss these issues with friends, family, colleagues, anyone who's willing to engage in thoughtful dialogue. Sharing insights, debating different viewpoints, and listening to perspectives different from our own helps us all develop a more nuanced understanding of the complexities we face.
It's about fostering a culture of critical thinking and open dialogue where we can challenge each other's assumptions and work together towards a more informed and engaged citizenry.
Well said. Remember, democracy thrives on the active participation of informed citizens. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
That's a fantastic takeaway. We hope this deep dive has given you a clearer picture of the political landscape as of February 13th, 2025. It's complex, it's messy, but it's also a landscape where your voice and your actions can make a difference. Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp. I like being fostered.